Okay, so we will call the meeting to order at 4:13. So we don't have any of our alternates, so we will move on. Can I have a motion to approve the minutes from August 21st?
I move.
Thank you, Ken.
Thank you.
Thank you, Eric. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Any abstaining? Okay, unanimous. And then we're to public comment on agenda items. So Alec, if you have any questions that you want to ask of us, this would be the time to ask it.
No, I'm just gonna hear what you all talk
Okay.
about.
All right, excellent. Okay. So the next topic is communication strategy and messaging plan. Unfortunately, I didn't get any responses from the First Selectman's newsletter where I put in that we're interested in hearing from people who are willing to help us with communication. I did not get a chance to do a separate email. I need to talk with Marty Lindemeyer about that and see if he'll allow me to do that. Just to see if we can rustle up some more people. One thing I was thinking about is we do need to finalize, and I know I promised I would make sure that the draft we were working on, that the beginning of it was streamlined more, and I did not do that. So I will work on that in the next couple days and get that out to you. And then hopefully at our next meeting, we can approve it. And then the other thing I could certainly start working on is getting us set up with social media of Facebook and Instagram. I don't know if you guys think there should be any other social media accounts. Those are the ones I know people in Kent use. Anybody have any thoughts on that?
That's what we use at the library. It seems to be getting us what we need.
Mm-hmm. Okay. So I will work on that. And is there anybody, I know we've got a smaller group here, but is there anybody on this call that would want to help with being an administrator of
what?
those? Of Facebook and Instagram? I mean, I'm certainly willing to do it, but I think there should be more than one person.
I don't think I can because I've already got the libraries that's connected to mine and it's too messy.
Okay.
I mean, it's just messy. I don't know how to put it.
You can do more than one. I know that myself.
Well, I have one of my own. So then it's like, it's
Yeah.
all complicated. Yeah.
Yeah. So I will put that out to the whole group to see if there's anybody else who's interested in helping with that. Because I think it would be important just to have more than one person.
Yeah.
And it may be that the selectmen want to have other people too. So I don't know if Marty wants to be part of it, but anyway, I will talk to them about that and see what is the process.
You know, I suspect that once we get that going and people find out that this is a way to talk about their less than satisfactory cell service or internet service, that you're just going to have a lot of hits and a lot of people, which is good, which in a way is good because it can begin to build momentum and some town consensus that this is an important issue.
Yeah, you bring up an interesting point because like the selectmen have taken the attitude that they're not going to comment on posts that happen like in the community Facebook group.
Mm-hmm.
Good.
But look, that's
non-engagement. Good strategy.
Yeah. So, but it does raise a concern because when false information gets out there, then it's like somebody needs to address it.
right.
So we haven't quite fully explored that and discussed how we're going to deal with that. Because
when you get the answer to that, Lynn, you could really let the United States know it would be helpful.
Well, we just had a situation recently where there was some false information put out there about political signs. So luckily the the Planning and Zoning Commission dealt with it pretty quickly, so. But it did bring it up because it came up on the Facebook group, so. Anyway, so I think those are the sort of steps we have left to do. Bill's not able to attend today, but he did say that he would continue working on developing op-eds. So as soon as he's got stuff that he wants to share, then we can start distributing that to different media sources and start getting that published. And then I think the next step is probably for us to come up with some dates as to when we want to actually sort of have some public meetings to like explain, even explaining what you just talked about, Jonathan, would be interesting, you know, that fiber optic is probably the next step over copper wire telephones.
Yeah.
And, you know, and if we can get, you know, Frontier to talk with us and meet with us, that would be awesome. So anyway, there's different things that we could develop in terms of coming up with a public forum, in addition to just trying to enlighten people about the need for better internet service. So, all right. Anything else that you guys want to talk about with the communications plan?
Yeah, I did talk to Bill, and I know he is very keen for me to help out, which I will do. The next 2 or 3 weeks during harvest time for me is a little challenging, but I certainly will help him put pen to paper some of the things we've talked about on these calls, that at least on the topics I can be helpful with.
Okay. Hey, Sarah, how far in advance would we have to plan with the library if we wanted to do something in conjunction with the library?
I mean, a month is good.
Okay.
Doesn't need to be much more than that.
Okay, cool. All right.
Sarah,
Yes.
Lynn, or no, not Sarah, Lynn. You know, Lynn, I know that we've had a number of meetings with other towns. And we've had some communications with, you know, other groups that are doing the same thing that we're doing. But do you have any suggestions of any productive ways that we can join forces in order to move this forward by becoming part of a larger group? I know all of these other big meetings I've had tend to be very informational. And in my opinion, you get information, but there's no really forward, you know, movement. Now there's forward movement in the individual towns about, you know, their groups want to do X, Y, and Z, but I haven't seen, and maybe you have, any linking of interest in a way that a coordinated strategy develops that is more regional and covers a larger geographic area. Because in the end, that's what's going to give us more leverage over these service providers.
Yeah, that's a good point.
But I don't know how to do it in such a way that it's productive.
Well, we could invite the people that we've reached out to a Zoom gathering and sort of share what we've learned and invite them there. I mean, there's interest, but there's the feeling that I've gotten is that people feel like they were burned by the Northwest Connect thing of like, you know, they were making great momentum, and then Frontier comes in and says, oh, well, we're going to wire everything, so you don't need to worry about this. And so they just backed off of it. And then Frontier hasn't really come through with as thoroughly as they expected. So people feel pretty jaded.
Ken, I think, trying to think ahead, I think one of the most important places of alignment is towns, municipalities coming to agreement as to what is the acceptable level of service we're seeking over the next 5 to 10 years and the competitive environment we want. I say that because listening to some of the feedback Lynn and Eric and others have given us, a lot of towns feel like they're in good shape based on some either specific or non-specific standard. And I
Right.
think that at least the team in Kent already recognizes that one of the challenges is that we see that in the future, what is going to be a minimum level of service is going to be hard for us to obtain, and that it's going to take us a considerable amount of time and energy to get to that point. So that if we don't set a standard that we're seeking to achieve and get a consensus about what that is, we're not going to get to our endpoint. And I think that without us getting some alignment with other municipalities about what is the end goal for these communities, we're going to, I think, go around in circles about, well, you know, most of our people seem happy, or, you know, we've got Comcast, they're good. I think that's one of the challenges we need to overcome before we can align with people is what is the end state that these communities need?
I think that's a great idea. And that's something that it seems like we can bring a group of, now we have connections with people who are knowledgeable on the subject. And if we bring them together with the point of trying to come up with an, what do you call them, standards? A service?
Yeah, I mean, so what service I mean, I think from a municipality standpoint, it's what service level do you believe is a minimum? What coverage, you know, I truly mean this when I say I don't think it's necessarily given that each town should be committed to 100% coverage. Maybe it's all but the most difficult, whatever the standard is.
Exactly.
And the final is also, I think, you know, and I think Lynn is correct, there's not enough emphasis on this, is affordability, which is the code word for competitiveness. Let's be honest.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm not afraid to say on this call that there's no place in the world where there's a single utility provider where people are happy with price. When there's
Right.
at least two people, you have competition.
So Lynn, that looks like something that's achievable because we can bring a group of people in here together. We can have a discussion. We have a designated person or persons who have the responsibility of taking notes of the meeting and coming up with a consensus paper, a draft paper of, you know, what the minimum levels we're trying to achieve. And then we begin to circulate that to the various, you know, different communities around to get their agreement. And if we could get, that is a really good first step. And the thing I like about it is, first of all, it seems like it's achievable. It's not achievable in a short term. It's going to take some period of time to bring the people together, take all these notes and boil them down into a position paper, and then circulate that position paper and get comments. But it's something that is achievable. We can bring that to the attention to the political leadership of the community. And look, the worst case is that we've brought these groups closer together, talking to each other in a more productive way. I think it's worth the try.
But do we want to say what the federal government has set as the goal, as our service level minimum, or is that
1 gig up and down, 1
Yeah.
gig up and down?
Well, I don't know. But I think that's for the communities to collectively decide. I mean, if we decide to accept, but you know, what Jonathan is pointing out is a little bit deeper than that. You know, talking
Well, there are other
about
facets. There are other facets.
there are other facets of that.
Yeah.
And so, you know, maybe what we can do is put together, Jonathan, maybe we can work together and put together, if we brought a group together, what would be the objectives? Define the objectives.
Mhm.
Yeah.
And all we have to do is, you know, let's define the objectives. And then once we agree that this is the set of objectives, then we can reach out to the other communities and saying,
Yeah.
We'd like to set up a meeting, preferably in person, so we can have a discussion, you know, to
Well,
talk about
we could
how
try, we could try Zoom and then have maybe an alternate of in person. Some of these people are very far away.
Yeah.
So I think we'd probably have better participation.
That's fine, but the first thing we need to do is to set up, here are the objectives of the meeting. This is what we're
Okay.
trying to achieve, to be as specific as we possibly can. And Jonathan, I'm happy to work with you to begin put together, you know, a paper like that. And then that will allow you, Lynn, you know, most of the other groups, to say, you know, would you be willing to participate in a Zoom meeting with the end objective being to try to come up with agreement, you know, on, you know, in line with this as to what our objectives are as a region.
I was wondering, my understanding is that Marty, is that there's a consortium of a number of the towns that meet once a month or something like that.
Yeah, that's
FinCom.
Northwest Hills Council of Governments. It's all the first selectmen of the towns. But
Is
they
it-
have not been talking about broadband at all.
Right.
Is that a possible something that we could introduce through that group?
Well, when I talked to the woman who's in charge of economic development for COG, she said that it would be possible to work through her, but I don't know. I mean, I can go back
Yeah.
to her and say, we'd like to do this. Could you please share this information with all of the first selectmen?
Except,
Um,
but their knowledge of this is not going to be nearly deep enough. And if every one of these communities has a group working on this, and if the groups coming together can come up with a set of end objectives or goals that they can reach agreement on, then at that point in time, we can go to the first selectman, because then you have a lot of power.
yeah.
You've
Can-
achieved consensus.
Just to clarify, there really aren't that many groups. Litchfield has a
Yeah,
group
it's
working on
true.
it, but it's mostly just one or two people working in the different towns.
Sure.
That's
So,
okay.
yeah, so I mean, we definitely have the contacts. It might be a nice sort of backup to say, here, first selectman, this is what we're proposing. Please make sure the people in your town know this is happening.
Yeah.
Because there are a few towns that we just couldn't get any response from. So. But that's a good thought.
I think we're likely to find that, and Lynn, you know more certainly about the local governments than I do any day of the week, but where does this fit on the priority level for some towns, given A, they're getting some level of good service, B, Jonathan, being a geek that I am, sit here and talk about all these desirous standards. We do know there's an economic and prioritization effort here about not only the time of the municipality, but any resources that be put toward it. And Alex, since you're listening in, you should check in on what Sharon is doing to try and make up for their shortcomings of the last 20 years and the money they're spending. I think that we may not get people to agree with us, but I do think, as Ken is saying, this is the type of dialogue that can bring to people's forefront of their minds that this might be more important than they realize over a longer time frame. It may not be a priority in 2024, but as we keep saying, this is a long tail type of problem. It's not a problem you can solve in a short period of time. If you find out you're in a difficult situation in 2026 and a part of your community is not going to be served appropriately, you've got a 3, 4, 5-year tail to try and address that issue if you can. So I think it's a worthwhile effort, even if, I don't want to say even if we don't achieve anything, but it will bring to the forefront an issue that probably is not on the forefront of people's minds.
Yeah. Good point. Yep, I agree too.
And resources, I mean, we're not avoiding this issue, but as we all know, I mean, this is a resource issue, right? I mean, the problem can be addressed. It's an economic decision. It's a tax decision. It's all those things that are way beyond my pay grade.
Right. And, maybe if we can pull together people, that'll put some pressure on Frontier to actually meet with us and talk to us about because then we'll have a little bit more political power with them, maybe, who knows?
Right.
I think
Um,
realistically, you're not going to be hearing a lot from Frontier for a period of time.
You mean because of the because
Merger.
of the merger
Yes.
action?
They're
And it-
until this merger is approved and completed, they're going to be at a standstill.
Do we
Okay,
know
so-
what the status of that is?
It's an announced transaction. It's a reaction. It's a transaction because of both the industry and the size that will be reviewed. But in my opinion, at the federal level for sure, and certainly by the state of Connecticut, because Frontier is the predominant local area phone carrier in Connecticut. So there is a huge, it's a hot potato issue. Yeah, I mean, it would not surprise me if this deal, if this transaction is closed, it could be at least 18 to 24 months.
Oh,
in
I
my
think you're
judgment.
right. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
2 years.
for the minutes, we should say that that we learned about a merger with Frontier with Verizon.
Yeah.
Just so.
I had failed to send you guys, by the way. I found it quite interesting. I'm signed up for all the press releases. Frontier Charter just announced a whole pro-consumer policy they're trying to implement in terms of broadband service. I'll send it to you. You can interpret it as you see fit, but I imagine this is because of the pressure of Frontier rolling out in a lot of its communities, fiber optic service.
Right.
So
I
are they
got
ta-
it.
are-
I was
You know,
given
Jonathan,
a,
I looked at the charter announcement, and there didn't look to be much substance to it. It was more public relations.
Oh, I'm not claiming any substance.
Yeah.
It is a cable company, for God's sakes, Ken. What substance do you
Yeah,
want?
yeah.
we got a solicitation, right before we heard of the merger. We got a solicitation at our house that says fiber is available at where you live. So I didn't
From
follow up.
Frontier, Sarah?
Yep, from Frontier.
Well, that's what Bill got too. And
Yeah, well, because
I
we
mean,
live in
you're-
the village.
Yeah, yeah.
You know,
yeah.
so
Yeah, no, I'm very confident they're going to pass South Kent and downtown Kent. Very
You know,
confident.
Sarah, I would encourage you to respond to that because it's a superior level of service. And I think in the end, it's going to be less expensive for you.
well, that's nice. Thanks.
Also, we can come over to your house and use your bandwidth if we need it.
Seriously, like the last thing I need is more time on a freaking screen. So, and I
But
kicked all my kids out of the house, so there's no more gaming.
But it would be
Oh, wow.
interesting to see, because some people have said that they've tried to respond and then the people answering the phone, the customer service people, have no idea what they're talking about. So you should
Oh, yeah.
you should at least call and see if you get a decent response and they can
Interesting.
tell you how much it's going to cost and stuff like that.
Yeah. I should be clear, by the way, I don't know anything that you all don't know, just my experience in the industry. I don't believe that the announced Verizon merger is going to materially slow down their existing plans for rolling out fiber, because that is why Verizon is buying Frontier, is the fiber plan. What I do think it's going to disrupt is any extraordinary plans, community outreach, exogenous deals, those type of things that we've been talking about. I think it will freeze the organization considerably for a period of time.
You're talking about rolling out service for affordability to.
I mean, can the existing Frontier fiber plan that Verizon no doubt reviewed as part of the merger, I think that'll continue, because the reason why Verizon is making this acquisition is to increase its global fiber optic footprint. That is the driver of this deal. I just mean that Frontier as an organization, because of all of the unknowns that we know come with mergers, is not going to be in a good position to talk about off-plan trend discussions about partnerships and the like. That, I think, is what's going to be harder for them over the next 12 months.
Yeah.
Makes sense. So that actually brings us to Connecticut Deep is having another one of their BEAD roundtable discussions next week. So Eric and I have both signed up for it. So we will find out if there's anything new. I would hope they'd be telling us about, how is the funding going to be rolled out? So
Yeah.
hopefully we'll learn about that. And I know last month I shared the map, and then they changed the language. It says it's actually a map of challenges and rebuttals. So the ones that are marked as not served, I would think that those red dots in our town are the ones that are going to be eligible for funding. So it'll be interesting to get confirmation about that from the state folks.
Lynn,
Um,
unfortunately, I won't be able to attend, but what's interesting to me, I mean, you've got a lot of questions, I'm sure, is not just is it available funding, how does the state of Connecticut actually plan to attempt to remediate whatever problems they see? Are they planning to partner with specific providers? What is their plan? You know, how are they going to execute the funding? To
Well,
whom?
it is through the providers. It's through the ISPs. So like, that's the part that's going to be interesting. It's like, okay, so Charter Spectrum has 90-something% of our town. How are they going to provide for these people that don't have it? People who have satellite, like you.
Oh, I'm going to Sarah's house. My problem is solved.
Has there been any communication from CEN, Sarah? Recently?
Not about this.
Because the town hall is about to, they've been in negotiations and discussion with CEN. And Marty, I asked Marty what was the promised up and download speed, and I have to follow back up with him, but because
Yeah, I mean, we as the library, we don't actually get what we're supposed to get for
Right.
up and down because we've got such firewall stuff because we go through
Yeah.
our consortium in Waterbury, blah, blah, blah. So
Yeah.
there's so many things that can get in the way of all of
Mhm.
these numbers that at some point you just throw
Yeah.
up your hands and say, when I turn on my computer, does it work? And then you just stop complaining because it's,
So anyway, it'll be interesting to see what happens with Marwood and South Kent. Because they should be getting service as well. And so the reports from under the report section, Caleb said that Frontier hasn't gotten back to him. And I don't think he's heard from Spectrum either. So hopefully maybe we'll be lucky and they'll come back and want to talk to us, maybe not. And there hasn't been any update on outreach to towns. Nobody has followed up and responded to me. So I think that brings us to the end of the meeting.
I was going to tell Jonathan, you know, the public
Yes.
relations piece that you talked about, Charter.
Yeah.
Well, I'll tell you what's been driving that, because last year, Charter's stock price was up to $450 a share. It has been steadily moving down, and it got as low as $250 a share. And it didn't start moving back up until after it started making these press releases about their stringing out fiber
Sure.
to these other communities. Of course, now it's, you know, it's right around $350 a share, which is $100, you know, less than, you know, where it was. But, you know,
Right.
that's what's driving driving this stuff now. So
Mhm.
I can't believe you think they're financially driven and not focused on our well-being, Ken. I'm so disappointed.
Oh, you guys
That's
are too
why we
funny.
need, I mean, again, I'm stating my personal opinion. That's why I think a competitive environment is so important for all these communities.
that's right.
well, and I feel like the fiber, the Frontier situation is problematic for that very reason. Joining up with Spectrum.
I think you'll find that Frontier will continue to roll out. I think that I don't think it'll interfere with the fiber rollout by Frontier. That's just and I did read the press release and read the presentation that Verizon did for the merger. I do fear, though, that I'm very, very familiar with Verizon. I won't go into the background, but let's just say I used to basically be a slave to Verizon at one point in my life. They are extremely CFO, chief financial officer driven company. So, you can be sure they'll be making very financially oriented decisions about things like working with communities and any additional programs and the like. That's for sure.
The good news is we had a 50 basis point reduction in the Fed interest rate, and these interest rates are going down. And that means the capital cost to these companies to roll out
Sure.
the networks is less
Lower.
expensive.
Yeah.
Which is good for a company like Frontier. I mean,
Yeah, heavy debt load.
All right. So let's plan on meeting again on October 16th at 4 p.m. Steve Penner did indicate that this time doesn't work for him. It obviously works for all of us, but do we want
Lynn,
to
can I
try?
just interrupt really quickly? Task list updates from I'm just for the minutes, nothing? Okay.
Well, the task list, the one thing we talked about was, Ken and Jonathan are gonna work on defining objectives. That's what
Okay.
that's
objectives for a meeting
for a meeting,
with
And-
other communities.
other municipalities, yeah.
Yeah.
Representatives of other
Representatives of
municipalities.
Alex, do you have any other questions before we close the meeting?
Oh, sorry.
I suppose my only question would be for Lynn, the meeting that Deep is hosting on the bead roundtable. Is that open to the public, or is that
Yeah, it's
yes.
a Zoom meeting. I
Sounds
can
Zoom,
send you, I can forward you is your email listed on the Lakeville Journal website?
I'm brand new, so I'm not sure if it is yet. But if I can just email you after the meeting as well.
Okay,
Yeah, so I don't want to
that's fine.
anybody else's time.
What town are you living in, Alec?
So I'm living in Norfolk, just moved.
Okay.
And I'll be covering Salisbury, Sharon, and Kent. I'm in Salisbury right now, sitting outside White Hart.
I'm impressed that
Um,
you said it right for a new guy. Well done.
Yeah.
Oh yeah. Well, I've been coming. I grew up in Westchester County, and I've been in and out of the area, so I'm familiar to the extent that an outsider can be. But it's nice to finally live here.
Good
Well,
for
you're in
you.
the ice. You're in the ice box of Connecticut down there. Is it?
I know. Yeah. Yeah. My dad lived here for a while, a couple decades ago, and he always tells me that.
Okay.
Don't get used to the highbrow up there landing at Salisbury. Come down to Kent, diverse community here.
I'll be in town quite a bit. Don't worry.
Great.
Yeah. Lynn, can I have your email real quick? Sorry to take everybody's time.
Sure, it's
but,
Lynn,
Thank
it's
you, guys.
Lynn Worthington at townofkentct.org.
Okay. Thanks so much.
Okay.
Thanks, everybody.
All
Thank
right.
you, Alec.
Thank you.
So
All right, guys.
I will send out an email and just double check that other people are not having issues with this time of day. And otherwise we'll plan on 4 o'clock on October 16th.
Okay.
All right. And so we will adjourn at 4:46.
Hey, have a nice evening.
All right.
Bye, everyone.
Have a nice
Nice
evening.
meeting you,
Bye-bye.
Alec.
Thank you for your input.
Thanks again.